Welcome to Test Chamber 4. The Enrichment Center regrets to inform you that this next test is impossible. Quit now, and cake will be served immediately.
I want cake.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com. Down there, we like magic. And today, as usual, got a deck tech for you. Now, at the end of the last video, we did kind of a social experiment. I asked you to go to the comments and tell me if you could see a deck tech in any 3-color combination, what would you want it to be? And the results didn't necessarily surprise me, or at least the number one answer didn't surprise me at all. The number one deck was Jund. A lot of you want to see a Jund deck. And don't worry, I got a Jund deck in the works that I have been working on for like 3 weeks now, just trying to work the kinks out. There's a lot of really good card choices in the Jund color combination. The deck that came in third was Bant, which, again, a huge surprise. We just came off of a format where Bant was the king of the format for like 6 months. Collected Company was probably the most annoying card in the format, you know, and it was sort of the entry to the format. You had to play Collected Company to play a good deck just a couple of months ago. So a lot of people got sick of Bant, so I was kind of surprised that people wanted to see this color combination again so soon. Let's start with the creatures in the deck. There's 20, which is about on par for a mid-range deck. We'll start with 3 copies of Thraben Inspector in the deck, which you see an awful lot lately, I know, but there's lots of reasons for it, especially in a mid-range deck. Looks like an aggro creature, especially with Smuggler's Copter going around. And we are playing Smuggler's Copter in this deck, so Thraben Inspector is a good way to crew the Copter. And in a mid-range deck, it puts a body on the ground and potentially draws you a card for just another 2-mana investment. That's really, really good. You know, we want a body, we want cards. This does that in 1 card for a total of 3 mana. That is very nice. Speaking of Smuggler's Copter, which we'll do a lot of in this format probably, we're going to play 4 Smuggler's Copter, which is like playing 24 creatures actually. But Smuggler's Copter, just, you know, obviously one of the best cards in the format. We have enough creatures to crew it. We want to do some things early on in the game. It's an aggressive flyer. It draws cards. Just like, there's a reason that Smuggler's Copter sees such heavy play right now. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And it's a good way to draw cards. We've got a few ways of doing that. But mid-range decks really want to draw some cards, and it especially helps if their creatures let them do that, because it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We want to play creatures, we want to draw cards. Bada bing. I'm going to play a 4 of Sylvan Advocate in the deck. I just think it's one of the best reasons to play green, especially in a mid-range deck. We plan to get to turn 6 or 7 or however long it takes to get 6 lands out. So Sylvan Advocate is pretty much a must. I mean, it's above curve before you even get to its bonus, you know. And we're playing Lumbering Falls in the deck too, so it makes a 5/5 Lumbering Falls. That's also good, but just on turn 2, a 2/3 Vigilance is pretty hot. We're also playing Tamiyo in this deck, and a lot has been made of the interaction between Sylvan Advocate and Tamiyo. So, what was that, 3-4 good reasons to play the card, other than it's just super solid? I mean, definitely play set. Last 2-drop here, we're going to play 2 copies of Selfless Spirit. You could go all the way and play 4, but I'm not playing 4 Avacyn in the main deck either. And I feel like the amount of Selfless Spirits you play is sort of directly proportional in a lot of ways to how many Avacyns you play. But, you know, we still got a bunch of creatures in this deck. This is pretty advantageous in certain situations, you know. They want to remove our big guy, they'll remove our Selfless Spirit instead, says we. A good thing to point out is that it saves our creatures from dying in combat situations, you know. And that is sometimes the best use for the card. Like, if you've got a similar board to your opponent, but you have a Selfless Spirit, that gives you a huge advantage in combat. That's awesome. We're going to play a 3 of Tireless Tracker in the deck into the 3 drops here. Earlier I said, you know, we want our creatures to draw us cards in a mid-range deck like this, and this also makes that happen, you know. In a green mid-range deck, this card is sort of just tailor-made for our strategy. So I don't want to go with all 4 of them here. I don't want to clog up our hand with all the Tireless Trackers, but I do want to draw the card once or twice over the course of the game, so I think a 3 of is the right number. There's also the fact that we're playing a bunch of 3-drops in the deck, so I don't necessarily want to overload on 3-drops and have too many of them. You know, I want to work down the curve and up the curve from 3, so I don't want there to be too many of these. But we do have a lot of good 3-drops in this color combination, and the next one is definitely the 4 of Reflector Mage. Gotta do it. Gotta do it. I will play 4 of this all day because I do want to see it, like, constantly. You know, if I see 2 or even 3 Reflector Mage over the course of the game, I'm never, like, unhappy with that, unless I'm playing against like hardcore control. You don't want to send torrential gear hold back to their hand or anything. So in that case, maybe you want to side it out when you go into game 2. But mostly Reflector Mage is a fantastic creature that sort of, continues the theme of we can play creatures and do other things at the same time. Tireless Tracker, Thraben Inspector, Smuggler's Copter all draw us cards and put bodies on the field. This puts a body on the field and is removal for at least a turn or 2. I actually really like Reflector Mage with Smuggler's Copter. It's not necessarily synergy, it's just like a good turn sequence. Turn 2 Smuggler's Copter, turn 3 Reflector Mage, pop a dude back to your opponent's hand, and if you can pop a flyer back to their hand, that's really, really nice. And then, you can crew the Copter with the Reflector Mage you just played, loot, smash in, loot, and then hit them for 3 a lot of the time because you've just cleared at least one creature off the board. So that's just a really good turn sequence. You've got 2 things on the board, you removed a creature, you've looted, you've hit 3 in the air, that is nice by turn 3. That's really good. So I just wanted to point out that it's not really synergy, it's just cool interaction, good turn sequence. I'm going to play 2 copies of Spell Queller to finish off the 3 drops here. Again, I don't want to play all the 3 drops, and there's a bunch of removal in the format right now that can take out Spell Queller pretty easily at instant speed. So I don't want to go crazy with the Spell Quellers, but I do still think that it's a pretty good card. I mean, against all those control decks that I just said play a lot of removal, this is still at least okay if you can protect it properly. It's a little bit fragile, but we do have a couple of ways of protecting it between the main deck and the sideboard. So I think it's still important. To finish off the creatures, I'm going to play 2 copies of Archangel Avacyn in the deck. Really, really, affects the total malleability of the deck. I was going to say this card is versatile, but when you put Avacyn in a deck, it really makes the deck itself more versatile because you can play this aggressively. You can play this on turn 5, maybe during their combat step, and really start wrecking things. A 4/4 flash flying creature is crazy. You can flash this in and block Smuggler's Copter. Just overall, a great card at the top of the curve that lets us play a couple of different ways. I wouldn't be caught dead not playing Avacyn, and you could actually play more. Into the spells here, which we're not actually playing a whole lot of non-creature, non-planeswalker spells, But the ones we're playing are super important, starting with Blossoming Defense, which we're going to play 3 of. Hexproof at instant speed in response to removal is super good because every deck packs at least a little bit of removal, so this can be an effective counterspell of 1-mana negate against removal. It can also make your creatures bigger in combat situations. It's better in this deck than it is in a lot of decks because we're playing Spell Queller, and that has a huge bullseye on its back, and we can protect it with Blossoming Defense. In some situations, it'll put some of your creatures above Avacyn the Purifier's trigger, and that's cool. You can keep around your big Avacyn and then one of your other creatures. Sometimes Spell Queller if you don't want it to die. So all of that's super awesome. Blossoming Defense just great, just so good. And to finish off the spells, that was quick, we're going to play 3 copies of Stasis Snare in the deck, and you could play Immolating Glare in this slot instead. And I think a lot of players would because Smuggler's Copter and all these smaller, lower to the ground decks in the format. But I just like the versatility of Stasis Snare, It can take out any creature, that's pretty cool, or any non-hexproof creature, I guess. That's pretty cool. Anything as big as Torrential Gearhulk and stuff, take that out. It's really, really good against Emrakul. That's cool, especially since we're seeing Green-Black Delirium on the rise again. That deck plays Emrakul. Aetherworks Marvel's still a thing sometimes. That deck plays 4 Emrakul. So something like Stasis Snare can be nice because it gets around the protection from Instance Clause on Emrakul and just takes out everything up under ME2. And by the way, I was saying that Immolating Glare good against Smuggler's Copter and the small creatures. So is this, If we're on the play, then we can take out Smuggler's Copter on curve with the Stasis Snare. Still a good play. But into the Planeswalkers here, and the card that people were most excited about seeing for Bant, the entire reason that people wanted to see Bant, honestly, was Tamiyo Field Researcher, which we're going to play a 2 of. People have been really excited about this card since she was first released. I find myself alternating between her +1 and -2s a lot. We've got enough creatures in this deck to reliably protect her and keep her out. And a lot has been made of her interaction with Sylvan Advocate and by association Avacyn. Just creatures with vigilance are really, really good with her +1. So in this deck, Tamiyo does an awful lot for us. She's a great turn 4 play that will usually either lead to a decent attack step on our side, shutting out 2 creatures that can attack next turn, or letting us draw some cards, which are all things that we want in a mid-range deck. So yay, Tamiyo! More walkers. I'm going to play 2 copies of Gideon Ally of Zendikar, maybe the best planeswalker in the format. It's like this or Liliana right now because she sees a lot of play in the Delirium decks. But a lot of different decks play Gideon, and for good reason. He's especially good in this deck with our 20 creatures and Smuggler's Copter. The emblem is fan-freaking-tastic in this deck. Or against Control, if we can resolve a Gideon, we can just make creatures for days or put them on a 4-turn clock with this +1. This card just has an awful lot of play against a lot of things. It's good against aggro once you get it because it just pops out blockers, makes your creatures bigger in combat situations against aggro. Against Control, it's a never-ending creature factory. That's awesome. So Gideon just does all the things, and I shouldn't have to explain why he's good. Just play some Gideons. This one will deserve maybe a little bit more discussion, though. This is just one copy of Nissa Vital Force to finish off the Planeswalkers in this deck. Again, just like Gideon, she puts Control decks on a 4-turn clock with her +1. That's cool. And something that no one talks about, by the way, is that you can play a Nissa turn 5 and then, untap a land and play a thing with it. Play a Thraben Inspector or whatever. That is possible and has happened more than once. So that's good, in a situation where you're not going to swing with a 5/5 land for whatever reason. You can just have access to more mana or make her effectively cost 4. You can play Blossoming Defense, untap a land and leave it open for Blossoming Defense. That's cool. It's good in long, sloggy games, especially against Control that removes a lot of creatures, or even aggro where we'll get into a bunch of combat situations where we lose dudes. I just like something that lets us get creatures out of the graveyard right now, because creatures will be going to the graveyard and we want to have longevity. So that's pretty cool too. And what's also cool with Smuggler's Copter in the deck, I like their interaction, because if we have a Smuggler's Copter and a Nissa either in our hand or on the battlefield, then we can be a little bit more liberal with what we discard when we loot with Smuggler's Copter, knowing that we can get it back with a Nissa, or at least if it's a permanent. Her ultimate is crazy, especially again in these long sloggy matches. And she makes drawing a land in the very late game okay. Sometimes you'll draw a land and it's basically, hey Ziggy, by the way, just passing through. It's basically a dead draw, and dead draws are like the worst thing in Magic. So she makes those dead draws into live draws. That's really, really awesome. She's good against aggro. She's good against Control. She's good against other mid-range decks. It's just card advantage, she gets creatures back. This card is good, guys. Play the card. There's 25 lands in this deck, and it's fairly self-explanatory. You gotta play Lumbering Falls because Sylvan Advocate and it produces blue and green. There's not really much to say about this mana base. I just want to give you time to take it in. I mean, you could just pause the video and write it down, or just look in the deck, the description, because the deck list is in the description. I think you've had enough time to look at it, though. This is a Bant mana base. Here's the sideboard right here. We're going to play the 2 Ceremonious Rejection. I don't think it's 4 of important like it was during the Pro Tour. We're a little less scared of Smuggler's Copter, but hey, it counters stuff other than Copter, so that's good. Let's play Ceremonious Rejection. Fragmentize, also kills artifacts. Let's play that in this format. Immolating Glare, there it is, in the sideboard against the lower to the ground aggro decks. Negate, still important against Control, and decks that want to play Planeswalkers and stuff. Just Negate is very solid. Blossoming Defense will fill out the play set up for against Control, and then Verdurous Gearhulk is in there again for these sloggy matches or games where we're getting board stalls, because it's pretty good at breaking them. And here are your power rankings right here. Final score of 68, which is pretty good. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that 68 is pretty high up on the scale there. This is a pretty competitive deck that plays an awful lot of powerful cards. That's where it gets that 9 in power from. And note that we're really not bad in pretty much any stat at all, We're kind of bad in synergy because we do have certain synergies, There's Tamiyo and Sylvan Advocate and Avacyn. There's Avacyn and Selfless Spirit. There's some synergies thrown in there, but it's not a deck that relies on synergy. But other than that, we have pretty good game in nearly everything. The bad news is that 68, that high score, as usual, will cost you. Right now, the deck is at about $225 for the main deck, and when you add in the sideboard, it'll get you to about $260. So not extremely light on the wallet, but I'll say this again a bunch of times, it's not the $1,000 standard of 1 year ago this time. But what are we doing next time? Next time I've got a deck I'm really, really excited to give to you, actually. It's going to be $8, not even $10, $8 green-black aggro, and I've had very good results testing this deck so far, especially for a deck as inexpensive as it is. I think this deck could actually do a lot of work for you at F&M, depending on your LGS. So I am super, super excited to give you green-black aggro for just $8 on TCG Player next time. So sub, so you can get that content in your inbox when I release it, and then hit the thumbs up if you like the content. That gets the video out to more people, helps me grow the channel, and you can do that. It takes like 1 second, and you can contribute in that way. I don't have a Patreon or anything. Just please hit thumbs up. Please, it helps a lot. But for now, I'm tapped out. Hey, I said it. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.
Yo, I'm sorting through some heinous haters like a pooper scooper. I'm just trying to take my life like a Koopa Trooper. I'm double Mario, that mean I'm super super. And I'm freaking dangerous like a Chupa Chupa Cabre. Got them all day like a Kanye, but I'm way better getting cheddar in Monterey. But Jack, you don't know, man. You got the show, man. You want roast beef? Well, I'm Arby's.